I know this thing is on, and I know that you can hear me. Nursing and healthcare needs advocates and activism. So what are you waiting for? Let's do the damn thing. Hi, and welcome back to The Gritty Nurse, an unfiltered conversation about healthcare, nursing, and the intersection of health politics and policy. My name is Amy, and I am The Gritty Nurse. This podcast examines hot topics in healthcare and discusses the changes that we need to see to have a more efficient, robust, and ethical healthcare system that is safe not only for the patients that we see, but also for those who work in the system as well. Sorry, no fluff here, just awesome, compassionate humans and a lot of grit. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast platform, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on any real stuff from The Gritty Nurse. Welcome Matthew and Richard to the show. So before we get started, I always like to do an introduction for the guests who are listening. So maybe we could just start with, telling me a little bit about yourselves, your background, and maybe we'll start first with Matthew and then Richard.
Fair enough. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Matthew Flagler, and background. Wow, it's kind of storied, but I'll try to keep it short. So
it's all good.
My deal is that in a roundabout way, I found myself entering the fire service. I became a firefighter, moved into fire prevention, and then started working in the private sector doing that, but have retired just over a year ago. I'm an author, just like you, but not a best-selling author like you. So, I've published one work of nonfiction about a tragic fire and explosion at the Quaker Oats factory in my hometown of Peterborough. It's written in narrative format, and it's told to the fire. Anyway, and now I guess I do TikToks, and I just cleared the 50,000 follower mark on TikTok. So I'm pretty stoked about that. And I have the bulletin board feature now, so I'm really pumped to see what I can do with that. But there you go. That's my background.
Well, see, there's things I didn't know. I didn't know that I knew that you wrote a book. I didn't know what the background was. And then I don't know why. I just didn't know that you were a firefighter. But now, I'm starting to see the connections with some of the conversations that you're having in relation to healthcare. Because again, I think you've probably seen some of the best times and some of the worst times in healthcare. So I can kind of see now where your spirit lies in terms of having these conversations. So I'm glad you're here today, and we'll have much more to discuss. Richard, tell me a little bit about yourself and your background.
My name is Richard Hackett. I work for GM, building trucks. Just average Joe, pretty much. Nothing more to Matthew, so.
I think you're a little bit more than the average Joe. So how about we get into talking about why you started a petition?
Well, the comment that Matthew left on his page is about how healthcare is going to shit and everything else. So I got thinking, I was just like, well, my son has a learning disability and he has ADHD as well, but he also was put on the wait list for an OT for a long time since he was 4 years old, pretty much starting in kindergarten, and he's still waiting. I always did follow-ups too about how far along he is on the list, and it's just they've been saying it's a long wait list. So I decided, you know what, his comment about the healthcare system and all that, it's time to start a petition to actually make it as a right and not a privilege to have healthcare and education. So that's how I am.
Yeah, no, I think it's so important that you started a petition. And I think this is where I'd say a lot of people actually don't know what to do. So for example, I am a parent too. I have twin boys. So one of my boys has autism and ADHD, and my other son has ADHD. And I think it was really, so my boys are 14. And the amount of energy we have to expend just to get not even the basics. Sometimes it's not even the basics that we're getting, but the amount of fight that we have to put into just asking for, extra support, making sure that there's an EA in class. Now my boys are going to high school. So just trying to find a high school that'll have some of these same supports. As parents, we have to go above and beyond, and it shouldn't be this difficult to try to get the basics. And particularly when it comes to education and healthcare, we know that these things are intertwined as well. And it's very frustrating, to say the least, to just say, my child deserves to have these things too. Like if we're talking about having a society in which, everyone can participate, then why not use that equity-based lens and make sure that, maybe that child doesn't need those resources, but mine does. And it's really pathetic that your son's now 8 and you've been waiting 4 years and nothing has changed. And again, when we talk about like the Ford government, these are some I just think back to like when he first came into power and all these different things about him campaigning. He's going to, decrease the wait list because Kathleen Wynne was in previously and it was a shit show then too. But again, now we're seeing this turn of nothing's really happening and we're seeing this slow creep of privatization. And I think maybe I'll bounce it to you, Matthew, to talk a little bit about what are some of the concerns that we're seeing, particularly in relation to education and healthcare, and how this petition might be able to support and make changes in terms of some of the things that we might be seeing.
Yeah, it's a great question. You just hit the highlights of it, of exactly what I'd say about this. It seems like there's a very deliberate attempt to underfund public healthcare and education in Canada, in any provinces where especially there's a conservative government in power, and so that they can turn around and then say, see, it doesn't work. We have to try another model. But it's all about, and where it gets a bit conspiracy theory maybe, it's about they're doing what's best for their pocketbooks and their campaigns, and it's so insidious. So this petition, the reason I agreed to support it, Richard's message is amazing that we need to protect public healthcare and education at all costs and make sure that it's not to the whims of a provincial conservative premier. And I'm sure Richard will discuss this too. And I know you didn't specifically ask, but some people have expressed a concern. Well, what happens when a federal conservative government gets in? Couldn't they muck this up? And that's not what this is about. It's still delivered through the provinces. It's still business as usual in that regard. It's about ensuring there's transparency, ensuring that those public health care dollars that were earmarked for such to the provinces are used for such, right? It's not about taking away from the province as much as it's regulating it to ensure that it remains public forever.
Yeah, no, I think that's what people need. And I think that's what, again, healthcare has this accountability issue, right? We just don't track or follow up with anybody in relation to when healthcare spending happens. So the federal government says, here's the money that's allocated towards the provinces, and the provinces can kind of do whatever they want. But again, this is where it's problematic, where we're seeing, they're not using it in the way, or they're deliberately underfunding it. And I think this is where, again, Richard, I think this is where you're like, I'm just a regular Joe, regular Joes, regular people. We make up the body of, Canadians. And I think it's important that people take action like what you did, because I think a lot of people just don't know what to do. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about petition E6982.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. The Constitution is, the healthcare is in the Constitution, Constitution 1867. Well, the government is only responsible to hand the money out to the provinces, and it's up to the provinces what they want to do with it, which that's why the Health Act was created, to sustain that basic amount. But there's loopholes in that Health Act where you can two-tier systems, third-party systems, you know what I mean? It's just, my petition isn't about putting it into the Constitution for federal government to control it, because once it's in the Constitution, they can't control it. They have to obey by it. So, and if they don't obey by it, right, then there's laws put in place for them to be held accountable. Where the Health Act, there is no laws. All it is a financial penalty if you don't obey by those 5 principles that are in that Health Act that you're supposed to go by. So this here is actually guarantees protection, makes the baseline on you cannot underfund it, you cannot take money from it, right? It's guaranteed rights for everybody.
Right. Could you break down a little bit what's in the petition? Like what's some of the language that's used?
Right now, I have 7,980 signatures. So it's getting there. And some of the wording in here is the Constitution Amendment processes under Part 5 of the Constitution Act of 1982 to formally recognize universal access to healthcare and education as constitutionally protected rights for all Canadians. It's pretty much stating that Everyone deserves to have those rights and not be taken as a privilege. So we should never underfund it. Like I said, it's already in the Constitution, but it needs to be stronger language put in. And like I said, the 1867 only gives you the bare minimum of what the federal government can do. But like, this isn't like taking rights or taking control over provinces. All the provinces will still have their access to doing the healthcare, stuff like that. It just forces their hand to actually keep the public system running,
Yeah.
not stressing it out.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think that's something that we need to see, particularly in healthcare again, because we're seeing this slow creep of privatization and the fact that, your son has been waiting. My children, let me tell you, like, just in terms of how much we had to fight for our boys, it was insane. And still to this
Yeah.
day, we're continuing to have to fight. And again, like, particularly when it comes to education, it's very, very frustrating because it's not even the bare minimum. Like I remember when my son first started school and we're like, okay, is he getting an educational assistant? Okay, it's a shared EA, but his IEP or his IPRC would say that he needs one-to-one support, but now he's having shared support. And then when you talk to the schools, they're like, well, it's the provincial government's not funding the boards properly. And again, you start seeing that trickle down effect as to how this is all happening.
Right. Like, we just had a meeting too about my son, right, for the IEP. And that's how they determine that he has a learning disability. So, and it's just that because they put him in that program now, but it's just he needs extra help so he doesn't get fallen behind in society. Because if we don't have those extra help, so then his future could be, I don't know, like, it was just hard to tell. Like, he won't have anything really.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I've talked about on my podcast too. It's kind of this whole deliberate underfunding. And then what we call it is it's like the ODSP pipeline, right? So they don't help support, our younger learners. They don't put all these actions and things in place that they say that they will do. And then we have, our young folks that are on ODSP and can't get off of ODSP or having trouble getting jobs. And then we see this very vicious cycle again, where ODSP in itself is completely underfunded. At this point in time, there's nobody getting $1,700 that can do anything. You can't really afford rent or food in that way. And again, we are creating these avenues and pockets of poverty in mental health because of the policies and procedures put in place. And that's why, we continue to advocate and have these conversations. I want to bring you back in, Matthew, to talk about some of the things here that we're talking about from that healthcare lens and that perspective in terms of your advocacy work. What is it you think that people need to know and understand about a petition like this and understand about what's happening in healthcare right now?
It's a great question. And actually, so for those of you who don't know, my platform on TikTok is predominantly social justice issues. So that encapsulates education, it encapsulates healthcare, it encapsulates indirectly what you were talking about ODSP. For example, universal basic income for everybody. And today's video, the one that I published this morning, just an hour or so before I came here, I was talking about this last couple of days about socialism, capitalism, and this idea that, there was a time when we collectively shared with one another. For most of modern history, or most of human history, rather, we've spoke to these issues of working as a community and building a community together. That's the survival of our species. The success of that was because of those things. And yet then we somehow got to a point where we could produce more than we needed. And that's when certain groups stepped in and decided they should benefit, this few, from the collective work of the labor. And in order for society to continue to flourish, we need to all, as society members, share in the rewards or profits or benefits of our collective work. And everything, if we bring it back to healthcare, insulin was originally not copyrighted or patented. It was available as a human good, right? These things of our history, and we've gotten away from that. So my page talks a lot about that. And today was this concept of that socialism is become a bad word, but It's really about living in society. And this petition's important because not everybody can afford the skip the line option at Canada's Wonderland, right? There's a lot of misinformation, for example, that, if you can put a second tier, a second lane in place and remove some of the people who could afford to go there to it, it shortens the line for everybody else, but it doesn't. It doesn't shorten that line at all. And the same goes for education. I understand people's frustrations. We have a healthcare system that's broken. We have an education system that's not working, failing so many students who fall through the cracks. The solution is not privatization. I know it seems like a good idea. And you have to ask yourself, who is promoting that message and what did they have to gain from it? Because we're not talking about ideology here now, Amy. We're talking about data and facts that privatized healthcare has never worked wherever a second tier has been placed on top. And the same goes for education. It doesn't. It's never worked. There are some countries where it has worked, but those countries are small, and the private system sits on top and enhances the public system that's properly and well funded, not as a second option that's more fully funded. So this petition is so critical because all of these things, the universal healthcare, the education, everything in society needs to be, basic human rights need to be accessible for everybody, regardless of stature in life, regardless of economic means, regardless, it has to be there. And clearly, if we leave capitalists and billionaires to their own devices, they will always do what's best for them and not what's best for us.
I completely agree. And I think this is where people have to understand that it's us against the conservatives, or it's us against the Democrats, or it's us against like whatever the case may be. But it's really actually about class. And I think people don't want to talk about the fact that it's actually a war on like the middle class, low income class, like the fact that, there are these, like you said, billionaires that are going to profit off of it. And really, the majority of us are going to lose if that's the way that they decide to set things up and we don't actually, fight against it.
Well, the thing is too, right? I understand from those people who support the two-tier system, right? And because maybe it's not worked for them for the public sector, but they don't understand that the public sector, if it was funded properly, they would have the same access and not long wait times, right? Where they believe that two-tier system would work, that they could just jump the line and go pay whatever, right? And they'll get it in like 2 weeks or a month or whatever. But they'll still get to use the public sector at the same time. You're really benefiting just yourself, not everybody else. And in society, everyone has to work together as a community kind of thing too, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I think what we see some of these provinces say in terms of some of their arguments, and again, this goes back to this kind of individual sense where it's like, oh, our governments shouldn't have to interfere. And they use it as like interference. They say, well, our government shouldn't have to interfere in education or in healthcare. People should have the ability to choose. And they kind of try to put it a spin on it that way, where again, we know that what will happen when we bring in profits over people, that again, there will be groups of individuals who will be left behind. We will see these inequities, and again, like you said, Matthew, who stands to benefit, who stands to lose, who stands to profit from these types of models? And again, this is where I'm very concerned when I hear this type of language, because it sounds really good and sexy to some people to say, okay, well, maybe I can pay for a $65 test, or maybe it is okay for me to jump the queue, to not realize that if we set the system that way, it won't work the way that they intend it to. And we've seen it time and time again where they've tried to do these types of systems where they privatize and we spend more money and the wait times are longer. And the only people who tend to benefit are the people who can pay large sums of money to get these things done. And again, it affects the health of everybody. So this is why I think we all have to stand up to say, hey, here are the gaps in education, here are the gaps in healthcare, and here's what we can do as a collective society against these types of things.
Right. And privatization starts small by, like you said, $65. Oh, people will pay $65.
Yep.
And then the price will go up, right? It will be like, oh, $200. They'll do that. And then $1,000. Then it goes out and, we don't need public now because they can afford the $1,000 or $2,000, but not everybody can. Especially with the rich keeps Dre with a bigger percentage between the middle class, it pushes the middle class down into the poor sector, right? So it'll be just poor versus rich. And who
Yeah.
benefits it?
And that's the thing, Richard, right? Like it creeps in, it's insidious, and the people who can afford to pay don't notice the carnage behind them. And I think that, unfortunately, I have a theory that people in general have become a little bit too selfish or self-centered. They're not thinking about others the way we once did. They're only thinking about themselves. And I don't mean to paint a generic picture. I'm just saying that there seems to be a lot of people who are only concerned about what's best for them, to hell with everybody else. And that also has to change. It's a system that we have more people are closer to homelessness than they are to being a millionaire. And most people are living paycheck to paycheck. And yet they still have this impression that somehow they would manage okay. They don't see the levels of medical bankruptcy happening in the United States and the cost of the benefits. And the service isn't any better. And actually, you're a nurse, so you get this. But I think people also have this mistaken impression that if you bring privatization in, those private healthcare companies are going to bring a whole suite of staff with them that they're already paying. The reality is that they're just going to harvest staff from the existing system, and it's going to put a further strain on the public healthcare system if we privatize. And education
100%.
ditto, right? Like we see these teachers in private schools, and we think that private company brought them. No, they poached them from the public system by offering them better pay and better benefits. And of course they went there because professionals follow the money. I'm not saying anything negative or untowards you, Amy, but let's face it, we all have bills to pay. And if some private company is offering you a 30% increase in pay, guess where you're going to go?
And that's the thing, right? Education, like that's why Ford froze the wages on nurses and teachers, right? Just so they could suffer while private comes in and say, hey, I'll offer you this more money if you come here, right? And then you just jump over there. So the two-tier doesn't work. It just takes it from the public, so the public struggles even more while the private gets bigger and bigger. And it just, look at education. Teachers deserve a bigger wage, right? Because they have to pay all their supplies out of their pocket. And they can only cover a small percentage on their taxes. So why do you think they fight for bigger wages and stuff like that? But yet other parents out there are complaining like, oh, they make too much money. Do you not understand what they have to pay out of pocket?
I don't disagree with you, Richard. And I think this is where people don't understand. And I think this is why we continue to have conversations like this one, right? I think when teachers go on strike, you hear about people griping about, how upset they are. It's, this has ruined my day, my plans. And it's just like, you know what? And this is the same for nurses who strike. Particularly, we don't have that ability in Ontario. And I know other nurses in other places can. And again, right now in New York, they have the largest nursing strike precedented. And I wish we had that ability, because the reason why there are labor movements is whenever teachers or nurses or whoever are striking, it's usually to benefit the public. It's to sound the alarm bell to say something is wrong. And the reason why we have to disrupt this labor is to ensure that these future generations don't have to suffer the way the kids are suffering or the patients are suffering current today. And I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, I remember actually having extracurriculars where I would go to volleyball practice or I would do all these things. And I'm like, and those things are gone. Like they don't even know what they don't have because they don't have it. And
now,
it's amazing how much has been pulled back. And every time a teacher goes out and strikes, I'm 100% behind them.
And
because
the teachers don't
keep
even
pulling away.
Yeah, the teachers don't even do extra tasks because they don't get paid for it.
Nothing extra.
So, and that's I don't blame them in a way, because take the Christmas concert at my son's school, for example, right? He was supposed to do a Christmas concert, but his music teacher refused to put them in it because it's cutting into her time because she's not getting paid the overtime. So she only gets paid 8 to 4 kind of thing. So after 4 o'clock, that girl's gone.
Yeah, I see the teachers peeling out of the school by
right?
like 3:35 and they're gone, right? Yeah.
I don't blame them, but in a way, like, who suffers more?
Hmm.
Teachers or the kids?
I'd say
And if
both.
right, like, if you don't have a functioning healthcare and a functioning education, no one's not going to come to this country to invest, to build the economy, to create jobs. Like, that's what appeals to foreign investors to come here and actually boost the economy, is by having healthier working people, smarter people, and you're just going to make them all dumb. And guess what's going to happen? They're just going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave the last question to you both here, and I think I'm always about problem solving solutions and how do we get people on board? Because I think one of the biggest challenges is really having these conversations. There's a lot of, I don't want to just say confusion, but there's a lot of anger right now. There's a lot of people who don't know who to trust. There's so much misinformation out there as it pertains to healthcare, as it pertains to education, and to those people who might be listening to that might be on the fence or even listening to say, I don't agree with these folks. What is the message that you think that you would have to say to them? And maybe we'll start with you, Matthew. What would you like to say to folks who are listening? One, about the petition, and two, about how we can ensure that, we're keeping everybody educated in the way that they should be and making sure that we keep healthcare public and safe.
Yeah, it's again a great question, and I do notice, and maybe it's because I moderate my page very well, but I get very little dissension when I talk about these issues. I think I've scared away some of the doom scrollers and shit posters, and so I don't see a lot, but I see some legitimate questions, and I've already addressed the one. Some people are concerned that a governmental change at a federal level could cause them to muck up something we work so hard with this petition to get protected. And I've already addressed that, so I won't highlight it again. But the petition, if done right and to a private member's bill and into law, will ensure that that can't happen. Again, the second objection that I see most commonly is, well, if I can afford to, I should be able to pay. And so, like, that frees up the line. It takes people out of the line, and it doesn't. It's a myth. And relatedly to all of that, like, this is a bigger issue beyond this podcast episode, but like, yes, some of the provincial governments are deliberately taking monies earmarked for healthcare and education and spending it in anything but, or they're diverting it to privatization. But the greater issue is that consistently since the 80s, with this concept of trickle down economics, we have slashed corporate taxes. We are not appropriately taxing the rich. We have this systematic underfunding in general. We have plenty of resources available to us. It's just that the wealthy have hoarded them. And I'll leave it with this message. It was a stat I saw that in 2025 in the world, we saw 286 new billionaires minted. In
Wow.
2025, 286 new billionaires minted. And in that same time, 9 million people died worldwide due to starvation. There is not a scenario in my world where we could have 286 new billionaires and 9 million people die of starvation. This is a greater issue. The petition, it's a stopgap, but in the end, we need to look at other funding models that ensure there's plenty of funds available that doesn't come out of the middle class or working class, because really there isn't. The people think of classes as how much money you make. So if you make this much money, you're in this upper class or you're whatever. It's not actually, Amy. It's not. The class difference is, the divide is how you make your money. So if you make your money by using your own personal labor, then you're working class, period, end of story. There's only that one class. And if you exploit labor to make your money, then you're a part of the capitalist class. And I think people need to realize there's this illusion that, one day I could be in that upper class. So I don't want to, say anything bad about it because they might not accept me for membership. And the reality is that's not going to happen for about 99.9% of people on Earth.
I
They're
think,
not
yeah, I
going to
think
ever
you
be
hit
in
the nail
that
on the
billionaire.
head there.
Anyway, that's my closing message. I don't know if I rambled too much, but there it is.
No, not at all. I think you hit the nail on the head. Like I said, I think that's what we also see kind of in America too. And we won't, because that could be a whole other episode. But the whole idea behind like the leopards eating faces party, where there's a whole class of people, like you said, majority of us are working class, that they think that these policies that are instituted will work for them, and some of them are seeing that they aren't. When they arrive in the emergency departments, when they are going to the food banks, when they're going to seek help for additional services, that those aren't the policies put in place. And now the people that they voted for, they are questioning to say, hey, well, I thought this wasn't going to happen to me. Well, again, I think this is where we have to have the conversation here. And I know in Ontario, we had the lowest voter turnout in the last election. And I'd like to say that we need to do better. I think that's also part of it, understanding that our vote is powerful. The ability for us to go and say, we don't want this person in power, or we want this person in power, or to go up to an elected official and say, hey, what are you doing to support education? What are you doing to support healthcare? I think we have to take that power back. And I feel a lot of people feel that they're powerless, but I think people need to make sure that we do go out and vote. And that's how we make change within our government. Last words to you, Richard.
Well, I just want to say is that Tommy Douglas he worked really hard just to get us the universal healthcare, even though doctors all voted against it and stuff like that and tried to lobby against it so hard. But like, he worked really hard to make sure everyone was equal, to have the exact same care. That my petition isn't about having federal control. It's about your rights and you having access to all those rights. So provinces will not be having their stuff taken away from them either. So this is just it's a set still thing. If this goes to the House and then to the floor and gets private members bill and it passes, I would feel like I'm like Tommy Douglas 2.0.
Well, we're working on it. We're going to work on, getting more signatures and getting more people to understand why it's important to have something like this and to sign and support.
And I think that's what a lot of people are probably still on the fence about, is because they're afraid. Because I've seen comments too about that if the Conservatives get in as federal, they'll take it away and blah, 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 right? But if it's put right into the Constitution, the whole country would have to pretty much be conservative just to get the Constitution open to get it removed, pretty much. So that would never happen, for one. And for two, is that this is a set in stone thing. Like, if you have this, they have to obey by it, by law, not the Healthcare Act. The Healthcare Act will just be wiped away. This will take that over, and all politicians will be held accountable. And if this gets to the floor and a private member's bill is made, we will know who's against this. That's the very important thing here, right? Is to get it to the floor to get voted on. And you will know for sure who will vote against it. Those are the people who aren't for you. They're for private.
Yeah,
that's
so
very, that's
closing too. I would want to add again. So for those who are listening who don't know, the petition's been live since the 4th of December. It closes the 3rd of April or something. Doesn't matter one day, one way or the other, but it has to get a minimum of 2,500 signatures just to even be considered. And we cleared that hurdle in the first week, but it needs to get 10,000 signatures in order to be considered on a private member's bill. And we're so close. It's just shy of 8,000 now. So I'm confident we will get the 10. Richard will get the 10. But I'm just saying, when we look at Alberta recently with the vote to separate, and it wasn't a House of Commons petition, but 440 something thousand people signed saying they do not want to separate from Alberta. If they can get 440,000 signatures for that in Alberta, surely to goodness we could get 400,000 signatures just out of Ontario alone with the population here to say we want this. So I'm excited that it's going to clear the 10. I'd love to blow the doors off that and see it be 25, 50, 100,000. The government can't ignore it if you get 100,000 signatures. So we need your help. We appreciate, Amie, that you invited us to come to speak to this. We need everybody listening to go sign this so that we can make a difference for everyone.
Yes. And again, I will put the petition in the show notes so people can access it. I'll make sure that we push to get people to sign. I do have a great listenership, so hopefully some of them as well. And then, yes, it will be on the show notes, and it goes out to all of my various different social media platforms. And I'll make sure that I'll add your social media platforms as well. Any last words before we go today?
No, I really appreciate you having us on and giving us an opportunity to speak about this. It means so much for the future of healthcare and education. So thank you.
This petition is like very personal to me. So, but I can understand for everybody else's. Like, I don't want them all being left on the list too, a wait list as well. So, but I did this personally just for me, my personal issues. But I can relate to everybody.
Yeah, and there are other kids that are still waiting, right? And I think that, again, another promise that he made that's broken, and we have to hold our government leaders accountable, and this is definitely one way. So again, yeah, thank you both for coming on. I'll make sure that I put all those links in, and hopefully we can get well past 10,000 signatures. So thank you so much for coming on, both of you.
No problem.
Looking for a great gift for a nurse or someone who needs to learn about nursing? Check out my national best-selling book, The Wisdom of Nurses, Stories of Grit from the Bedside. Thank you so much for listening to The Gritty Nurse with Amie Archibald-Varley. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast platform, please hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss out on any awesome episodes from The Gritty Nurse. Thank you so much, and stay tuned until next time. Stay gritty.